Welcome back to OnChain Revolution. My name is Yagobi, and happy Friday the 13th. It is Friday the 13th, and Bitcoin is acting a little freaky today, right? Showing a lot of energy for sure, getting back and reclaiming that $73,000 mark, right? But I hope that you guys are having a great Friday and start to your weekend, right? But, we are seeing similar characteristics of Bitcoin through this Iran conflict, right? To where it likes the conflict, it doesn't like the conflict. Yesterday, we pulled back pretty strong. Oil was up yesterday. Now oil's down. Bitcoin is up. So we're going to figure it all out together. But I do want to welcome back my TikTok audience, as well as my Abstract audience, and Zora, Rumble, Twitch, and of course, YouTube and X. And I just want to make sure Abstract is good to go. All right, perfect. But yeah, welcome everybody back. And on the YouTube side, smash that like for me. It helps me a ton, especially in these slower times. And subscribe to the channel if you like my style and content. And on the X side, it really would help me if you guys could share the stream space. That would be great. That would be awesome. And then hit that like as well. But we're going to get into multiple topics today. We're going to, see where Bitcoin might venture off into Sunday weekly close, and then to start next week, right? There's multiple headlines we're going to get into as well. One of them being somebody either fat fingered or something happened. I feel like there's a little bit of shadiness happening with the situation, but someone lost $50 million by not looking at the slippage warning sign message there on AAVE, and intended to get $50.4 million in stablecoin, but got only 400,000. So lost 50 million on that. We'll get into that. Continually drop your questions and comments in the chat, and I will get to them accordingly. But we're also going to hit on Trump, and is this administration playing games here? Because we're seeing oil, thrust up one day and then the next day pull back pretty dramatically. And then 2 days later, thrust up and pull back. And, I'm sure there's a lot of money making opportunities with situations like that, right? Of course, this is complete speculation, but, there's some warnings out there from CME Group that's saying, hey, if this keeps happening, this could be, a biblical type disaster for the financial markets. We'll hit on that as well. And I do have an update for my guy Stan on the Clarity Act. We'll get into that. And then we will finish out the show going over some RWA tokens, because as you guys know, I'm really bullish on the RWA sector because of the institutions being integrated with the Web3 space. We'll hit on some at the end of the show to kind of finish it off heading into the weekend. So it should be a fun one. Like I said, continually drop your comments and questions in the chat, and I'll get to those. Glasshopper says, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Glasshopper. All right, we're going to start the show off like we do every morning with that market pulse. But let's quickly get a Iran war update so we can maybe get a feel of what's happening here. So this is an update from the New York Times, and it just says, Iran war live updates. Hegseth vows to reopen key strait, and I think that is what is getting, Bitcoin back up and oil back down. But it says Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said that the U.S. military would stop Iran from choking off the Strait of Hormuz, but did not say how. Oil prices remained high even after Trump's administration erased restrictions on eased restrictions, I should say, on Russian shipments. And then here's the latest. U.S. officials on Friday vowed to thwart Iran's attempts to block the Strait of Hormuz as oil markets appeared largely unmoved by the Trump administration efforts to avert an energy crisis stemming from the Middle East war. So people are getting a little bit bullish on this, because the U.S. is basically saying, hey, we're not going to let that happen. Oil prices aren't going to shoot up. I was actually intentionally looking at gas prices yesterday to see if anything was starting to, get affected. Not too much over here that I'm seeing yet, but, the price per barrel is definitely going up, right? We're seeing it at $100, and that's going to be kind of part of the main topic we'll get into after the market pulse. So that's that Iran war update for the day. It does seem like starting to favor the U.S. in the headlines again for the Strait of Hormuz and the oil prices. So that is good for financial markets, but we'll see if it lasts. And it doesn't seem like it, lasts. Good news doesn't last very long lately. I'll tell you that. And also, before we get into the market update, I always do a Ordinal Revolution, OnChain Revolution poll on my X account. And if you guys wouldn't mind heading over to X and going to at OnChain Rev, you can see there's a poll up right now that says Bitcoin Ordinals Galleries, and you can choose which side you're on. Yes, do it now, or no need to rush. So this is a big topic in the Bitcoin ecosystem. Whenever you launch a mint in the Bitcoin ecosystem, there is no standard that kind of puts all of the ordinals together. And this is a big conversation. We had a spaces yesterday with Ordinal Hive, and that was the main topic, right? And so you can kind of put your opinion out there and, see, it gets away from the centralization. Magic Eden kind of held that, right? They were putting all the collections together. Now that they left, what do we do? So that's why this kind of came up here. But yeah, little fun poll there. And this is how we kind of kick the show off every morning with a poll update there. All right, so back to this market update. Let's kind of get into the economic calendar here and see what happened this morning. All right, so we do have the GDP revision for Q4 came in at 0.7%. Not good. The growth was, projected to be 1.5%, and the previous growth was for quarter three, 1.4. So we undershot Q4 of 2025 for the GDP, so that is not good. What did come in okay is the PCE. The PCE year over year came in 0.1% below the forecasted amount of, or projection of 2.9%, and the previous was 2.9%. Core PCE index came in as expected, 0.4%, and that was across the board there. So PCE came in pretty good. Job openings up a little bit too, 0.2, so 200,000 over what was projected for job openings. So that was good. So, mostly good with that GDP number kind of being on the bad side there. Got a couple more comments in here. We got Almond Joy saying GM, Almond Joy. And then Patapoo says, sup. What is up, Patapoo? Give me the latest update on the blood or the bull or bear moon on your cycle, what is happening, because I want to know. You're really accurate with that kind of blood and bull and bear moon there. All right, let me see what we got here. I want to pull up the markets for you guys and see what's happening. So yeah, I woke up, pretty shocked to see Bitcoin looking like it was heading towards 74,000, right? We got to 73,400 and it kind of reversed, but with what's happening with the oil and the war in Iran and all that stuff, let's kind of check out the overall financial markets and see what's happening here. So the S&P 500 pulling back 0.04%. Not too much of a hit there. The NASDAQ is pulled back 0.1%. So, the main indexes here doing pretty okay, right? The Dow Jones up 0.21%. You got the VIX pulling back 3.15%. So pulling back for the VIX there. The Dixie is up 0.44%. The Russell 2000 pulling back 0.2%. And the Mag 7 pulling back 0.77%. The stock giants here, NVIDIA pulling back 0.38%. Google pushing up 0.66%. Apple pulling back 0.7%. You got Tesla pulling back 0.06%. And then Netflix up 0.58%. And then for crypto, we are up 3% for Bitcoin and 4% for Ethereum. The precious metals, gold is down 0.25%, so not too bad, although it's less than it was yesterday. Yesterday, gold was, I believe, at like 51.70. It's at 5,064. So, it's definitely pulled back some, and that's very interesting. You see silver pulling back about right under 3%, 2.92%. So silver has pulled back as well. And then you got oil pulling back 0.59%. So oil is the one that is really dictating, what's going to happen for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's playing directly off of oil. Oil goes up, or oil goes down, Bitcoin goes up. Oil goes up, Bitcoin goes down. So that's kind of where we are with Bitcoin. And it seems like oil's kind of like, it was down further earlier this morning, and that's why Bitcoin's pulling back a little bit, because right now it's sitting at, pulling back 0.49%. So overall, the markets are kind of rebalanced back in my opinion, like in a good way. Precious metals is kind of taking the biggest hit, I would say. If you were to pick a market that was, getting a little bit more hit, it would be precious metals. But we'll got to kind of see, how does oil continue on from here, because it's been really back and forth, hopping back and forth, right? Patapoo says bull moon ends Tuesday next week. So there you go. You got the psychic bull moon ending Tuesday of next week. Does that mean that we got to take profits right now? Maybe. I mean, Bitcoin has been doing pretty good considering there's a war happening in the Middle East right now. Mice Elf says, yo, win galleries by Mr. Rottermore. Yeah, so that is, that was a big part of the discussion in yesterday's spaces. Bitcoin is decentralized compared to all these other chains. Like Ethereum, you have Vitalik, you have the ETH Foundation. They can set standards and say, hey, this is how it is. With Bitcoin and these meta protocols and stuff, there is like, everybody knows Casey started it, but there's not like a Ordinals Foundation that's like setting these rules. And sometimes I feel like I wish that they would, because we'd be able to move forward from that. He is definitely being more involved, though, and that is a good thing. I don't think he's going to be the one that sets that standard, but we'll see. Maybe he does. Maybe he pushes it forward. But galleries is definitely needed, in my opinion. I think it should be a part of the protocol when you make a collection mint. Putting it in a gallery on chain should be a part of it, so they're not just all spread out, as different inscriptions and just not tied together some way. But keep those comments and questions coming, though. Appreciate that myself. All right. So let's get to this main topic here. The main topic is, will Bitcoin hit 100,000 before oil hits $200 per barrel? I think yes. I think it will hit 100K before oil hits 200. And I'm going to show you guys a chart here. This is the chart for oil. And if you go to oil, price of oil per barrel, right? Where was let me go back. Because the all-time high for price of oil per barrel was $132 per barrel. And that was in 2008. And that was during the global financial crisis, right? That was whenever the housing market crashed. I don't know why it's not pulling up for me now, but anyways, I did see it, and it was $132. And for oil to get to $200, I think that this conflict has to be pulled out, pretty lengthy, right? And I don't think the current administration, that is something that they're trying to avoid, right? Now, it does seem kind of shady and sketchy that these headlines are trying to push the financial markets better, and then the other side is coming out with the new supreme leader making a comment, and it's going back and forth to really just mess with the price of oil is what it seems like, right? And who's benefiting from that? Maybe huge institutions that are in the know, right? That type of situation. And does it continually jump back and forth? Well, for me, I know that Bitcoin is on a specific trajectory, right? So for me, if I zoom out, I know that Bitcoin is, going back up at some point consistently, right? And I'm going to pull up here this weekly chart right here, and I'm going to zoom out. And for me, if oil doesn't get to $200 by, December of this year, then, which I don't think it is per barrel, then yeah, Bitcoin's definitely going to get to 100K before that. Because it could get to 100K before December, was it December 21st, 2026? And that, for the people that are listening, why does that date matter? Because that is the length of time that when the bear market started in October 10th of 2025, that I've timed previous cycles of when, we start to recapture the 50-day moving average on the weekly chart and the 100-day moving average, and we start to come out. So Bitcoin could be well on its way before we recapture that 50-day moving average, right? So we could be at 90,000, 95,000 heading up into Q4 of this year. So I am very confident that Bitcoin is going to hit, 100,000 before a barrel of oil gets to $200. Now, of course, if something becomes like really, really extreme, and we're talking about like an actual World War III scenario happening, right? And that strait does get completely closed off because there's just so much, battling happening in that area, that's a different story. But I just don't see that happening with this current administration. I don't think we get that intense into this, Middle Eastern conflict. So that is where I am on that. But we are, Bitcoin does look pretty good. It is heading back to, it looks like 73K. We were above 73K. Now we're below it a little bit, and it looks like it's heading back there. So let's get into a couple of news headlines before we get into the actual price action for Bitcoin to see how the rest of today could go heading into tomorrow. All right. So let's start with the ETF inflows. So the ETF inflows continued another day, right? So we have Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana all have positive ETF inflows again. So that is something that, if you were paying attention 3 weeks ago, probably 4 weeks ago, and you use that as like an indicator to let you know, we were about a week straight of positive inflows for pretty much all the assets across the board. Then we saw Bitcoin get aggressive to the upside, and then some of the alts, caught up eventually, right? So after that, we had, I would say about 3 weeks, and then we had a week of negative inflows, and Bitcoin pulled back. Now we're going on another about 4 days in a row of positive inflows, right? And we're seeing Bitcoin get aggressive to the upside. So this is definitely something, that's positive that we're seeing. But I will say one thing, Bitcoin's total inflow amount is starting to decrease. So, yesterday we were at, I think, 150 million. And today, right now, we're sitting at 53.8 million for Bitcoin. Ethereum's actually outperforming Bitcoin's ETF. And it yesterday finished at 72.4 million. And then you have Solana coming in at 3.9 million for yesterday. And then XRP was the only one that actually had a pullback, and it had an outflow of 6.08 million for yesterday for XRP. So, overall pretty good for the ETF inflows, in my opinion, as long as that continues on. All right. So let's get into some Clarity Act update here. John Thune, which is a congressman here, says he doesn't expect the Clarity Act to pass the United States Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs before April. So, I'm not too shocked that this is, he came out with this. I haven't been really, really confident with the way that Congress has been handling, the Clarity Act. Yes, this administration wants things to get pushed forward, but there's a lot of pushback from the banking side. And it did seem like this last week that they were coming together and with these centralized exchanges a bit, and seemed like we'd be able to move forward. But, he's coming out saying he doesn't think it's going to happen before April. So when is that, most likely going to finish out, right? And I think it's probably going to be after the summer. We got a lot going on in general right now, like geopolitically. And so Congress has a lot in front of it. And you'll notice too, one thing that Congress does is, if there is in any sector, industries, something that's affecting Congress directly. They will expedite the situation. An example of that was whenever they put the bill out for the predictions markets the other day, right? They said no more betting, if a war is going to start or if there's going to be an execution of a leader or anything like that. So it's illegal to do that. So Polymarket and Kalshi can no longer have those type of bets, right? Well, that was like they took that, to Congress and got a bill out really fast. So this is something that, they're dealing with, some of their lobbyists as well. Like, the banking sector has a lot of influence on government. And so that's why I think this is just being drawn out a bit longer and, trying to get both people on side here. Patty Poo says, Thune is a Rhino maxi. Yeah, there's a lot of Rhino maxis, right, on the GOP side. But that's why a lot of people say, it's the uni party, right? But at the end of the day, it's, these banking lobbyists that are, controlling a lot of, Congress. And there's different lobby groups that do that, right? But with the whole situation with crypto, and that's a different, that's the part that people aren't paying attention to. Like, crypto is here, like infrastructure is happening. So I'm not worried that this is getting pushed out, till maybe after the summer, because it's going to happen. The Fed came out and Kraken got a master Fed account, right? And you're starting to see more and more stablecoin TVL be onboarded to, to the crypto rails, right? And it's like TVL that's coming from institutions. RWA is growing. So this is going to happen. It's just, will the banking sector get what they want in the Clarity Act? That's where it is. And, the centralized exchanges on the crypto side, they want it to be fair. And I think that they're going to come to an agreement at some point, but it's going to take time. These type of things where two huge industries are kind of coming together, but almost clashing a little bit, it takes time for that stuff to happen. Stan says, what are the banking pain points for their acceptance of the Clarity Act? If it becomes a stalemate, can DeFi continue without acceptance? So, I think the whole stablecoin issues and the yield generations and that type of stuff is their biggest pain point, right? They want to make sure that they're not going to lose their business to these, DeFi entities that offer yield opportunities to everyday people. Because if you are able to start to market that to the everyday person, that, hey, look, you can earn, 6% passively off of your, stablecoin deposits or whatever, however they package that marketing, then you're going to lose deposits from traditional banking, right? So there's a big worry on that side of things. And the ways that banks work with fractional banking, they can't afford to lose a ton of retail deposits, right? Because they're lending money out. That's how they make their money, right? But I do think that the banks are going to, smarten up here and realize that, they have the ability to offer more versatile products, right? And with the DeFi approach. And so they have the advantage, actually, because they have the clientele. They have us, like the retail, right? Whenever I say us, I mean like society. So, it's their job to really be able to kind of, convince their clientele and customers to, hey, look, we have this product we can offer you. Now, that's where I think it kind of comes in as well, is like they're not necessarily willing to give what some of these yield, platforms are willing to give. And that, I think that's probably a bigger problem. They don't want to share as much of the profit, which at the end of the day, sucks for retail. But, hopefully this allows them to open up a little bit and be able to offer a better product to the public. So that's the latest update. Most likely, probably after the summer is what I'm thinking, whenever the Clarity Act gets completed there. All right, so this next story is crazy. It is absolutely crazy. So yesterday, or I think 2 days ago, this happened. But about 2 days ago, there was a $50 million USDT trade through CowSwap, which I believe is like a front-facing swap for AAVE. So they are very connected to AAVE. I think they're a part of AAVE. It said it resulted in a severe slippage as user received just 324 AAVE. 600,000 in fees to be refunded, says AAVE founder. But they were swapping 50,432,000, and what they got back in return was actually, it was worse. So what they got back in return was $35,934, right? So they lost about $50.4 million in one swap. And this is the kind of stuff that is, scares mainstream adoption away, I feel like, right? Because and this is also another crazy thing, is that it was on a mobile app. Why are you swapping $50.4 million worth of value on a mobile app? Number one. And okay, let's say the mobile app is fine. You have to actually click the checkbox and then you hit swap. And this person did that. And what AAVE is saying is that they had, they confirmed that the warning message was out there. It was put out there that, hey, look, this slippage is completely off. You're about to lose a lot of money. And they continued with it. So the only explanation that I have for this is that the person was probably really drunk, right? Or something, because if you're doing anything in that large amount, some amount, I'm like, my hands are shaking, right? Like I'm like very trying to make sure every aspect of this transaction is going to be perfect to a T. And if I'm clicking the checkbox, I'm reading everything, right? So I guess AAVE's coming back and saying that they're going to refund them $600,000 in fees, and that doesn't really help much. I mean, you're still losing pretty much, $50 million at that point, a little bit less, but man, that sucks real bad. Keep those questions coming. I see your questions there. I'll get to them in a second. But yeah, imagine if that happened. Man, that would not, a lot of people say like, having a bad day, that's like having a bad life at that point if you did that. Honestly. Ugh. I couldn't even imagine. I would throw up instantly. I think I would just like projectile vomit if that happened with me. But all right. Next topic here. This one's also kind of interesting here. Vitalik Buterin. So do you guys remember whenever Vitalik, he got sent like a bunch of Shiba Inu coins back in 2021, and he was like giving them to he gave some to India because for the disaster relief, because I think there was a huge earthquake in India or something like that. Well, he also gave some to other entities at the time. So the block has an article here that says Vitalik Buterin questions political pivot by AI safety group that cashed out roughly $500 million from his SHIB donation. Oh my God, imagine $500 million as like a donation. And I'm sure that they didn't. It gets crazier. So let's get into the article here. It says Ethereum co-founder Vitalik Buterin said Friday that a $500 million donation he made to the Future of Life Institute in 2021 was deployed in ways that diverged from the technical roadmap originally pitched, with the organization later pivoting toward political advocacy that he said carries risks of authoritarian outcomes. On its website, the Future of Life Institute describes its mission as steering transformative technology towards benefiting life and away from extreme large-scale risks. The organization lists artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and nuclear weapons as its primary focus areas. The funds came from Shiba Inu tokens Buterin received from the project that year, which he said he later split between the Future of Life Institute and the Crypto Relief Fund. I guess that's the relief fund that sent the funds to India. According to a post on X, Buterin said he anticipated the institute would cash out $10 million $10 million to $25 million at most, citing shallow liquidity in the Shiba Inu market at the time. Instead, FLI managed to liquidate roughly $500 million, according to Buterin, an amount he said was similar to what Crypto Relief received from its portion of his SHIB donation. Buterin said that when he initially donated to FLI, the organization presented him with a comprehensive roadmap that focused on improving all major existential risk bionuclear AI, as well as general pro-peace and pro-epistemics initiatives. Yeah, so that, and then the rest of the article is just kind of finishing that off. But man, that is so crazy. Imagine that. And I guarantee all $500 million of that did not go to those three topics. I mean, I don't know. I would assume not. And gosh, I mean, imagine like expecting 10 to 25 million. And they must have held on to that for quite some time, until SHIB like really peaked, because $500 value is crazy in Shiba Inu. Absolutely crazy. All right, we're going to get into the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and crypto bubbles, the price action here to see maybe where Bitcoin is headed for the weekend. To finish off this week, I do think we're going to have another green weekly candle, obviously, because we are well above last week, unless something crazy happens today, which it is Friday, and it's Friday the 13th. And, things can get freaky on the 13th. And so we'll see. But man, it did pull back, though. This is the hour chart for Bitcoin, which is where I always start. And you can see Bitcoin was in overbought territory since 5 a.m. yesterday. So we've been kind of in this buy pressure session for quite some time. It was weak initially, and then it picked up around 6 p.m. last night. And that's whenever it really started to go into this uptrend, right? But as of right now, we're coming out of the stochastic RSI of the overbought territory. We're sitting at 40.73 and heading like it wants to head. The fast line looks like it's really wants to be on a beeline here to the oversold territory. So, maybe expect some challenging 71,000, 71.5 here in a little bit here. The MACD also is starting to break down. So momentum indicators are saying we're about to, peel back a little bit here for Bitcoin for the next 2 to 6 hours. We had a strong morning, and that is one thing about Fridays, is that sometimes Bitcoin will start off really strong if there's some positive news or, a headline from Pete Hegseth about how we're going to open this straight back up. And then finishing the day on Friday, heading into the weekend, things get a little bit relaxed and people are done. People are, gone for the week. The professional traders in New York, they're done, and all these trading firms. And so that's probably what I'm expecting more for the second half of today, to be honest. We got as high as 73,944 today, but remember, that is that resistance level. You can see here, man, if you from on the wick, at least you can see that 74,000 has been really tough for Bitcoin to get past. If it can finish like the daily candle above 74,000, that is whenever I feel like, okay, we have a chance for another leg up. Until then, it's going to be bouncing between these levels of 74,000 and 66,000. That's the support and the resistance right now. And until we finish, like I said, that a daily candle above that. But for the rest of today, I'm thinking sideways with some downtrend. Honestly, we've kind of reached that pretty aggressive top for the day, in my opinion. Hey, look, some big news could come out that is, not expected, and we could go another leg up. But if things continue the way it is right now, I do see a little bit of peel back happening, maybe creeping back into 71,000. We'll see, maybe 70,000 for the second half of today. So that's what I'm seeing for the hour chart. Let's jump into the 4 hour here really quick. See what's happening here on the 4 hour, which gives us a 2 to 3 day forecast. And heading into the weekend, it can be a little deceptive, right? Because tomorrow is going to be a very thin liquidity trading day. It's Saturday, whenever wars are happening, though, anything can happen, but typically, right? So the 4 hour looks like it's still showing some strength here. So it's not breaking down just yet. If the 1 hour, the chart, the time frame I just showed you guys, if that starts to really lose, that support level there, and we get down below 71, then we'll start to probably see this crack a bit. But as of right now, the 4-hour looks okay. And, basically looks like it wants to sustain. Now, again, if we start to crack below 72, 71, this will start to crack heading into Sunday. So the 4 hours not giving us, honestly, it's not giving us too much information right now. It is what it is. It's like we've had that strong push to the upside. Now it's kind of sustaining until it sees, that 1 hour time frame really break down. Then that's whenever we'll start to see some of this breakdown potentially a little bit later today. And then the daily chart for me is one that's really it's a little dangerous right now because we've been in this buy pressure session since the middle of February. I keep bringing that up because we're going on a month straight. It's not too uncommon that it lasts that long, but how much longer can it go? That is the question. We're already a month into this buy pressure and it keeps popping back up. At some point, it's going to have to go back down, right? At some point, it's going to have to go back down. But as of right now, it still looks strong. We'll see how it finishes the day. And, we'll see how it is on Sunday. So Sunday is going to be a big day because it's going to, have our weekly close as well as, how we start next week as well. As of right now, it kind of gives me the same vibes as the 4-hour chart, right? It's looking strong still. But again, I am paying attention to how long we've been in this overbought and continuous buy pressure session. So, if we finish a candle above 74 at some point early next week, or maybe to finish this week, that changes my mind. It says, okay, you know what? Maybe we can extend this even further. But as of right now, I'm just, waiting to see, if this starts to come out of this buy pressure and then start a sell pressure session before going back up. And as of right now, it's still showing, decent strength through the buy pressure session. All right, really quick hitting on ETH, and then we will hop into the alt market here in a second. All right, Ethereum on the 1 hour. Ethereum is sitting at 2148. So, it's enjoying that rise up that Bitcoin had as well, but it is pulling back right now, just like it always follows Bitcoin. So starting to lose the momentum on the MACD on the 1 hour as well. So kind of same thesis that I had for Bitcoin, sideways with a little bit of down trend for the second half of today. The 4 hour, same thing as well, right? Showing strength still. That shorter time frame can really change this up depending on how much ETH pulls back for the second half of today. And then the daily is very similar, right? So extension of the buy pressure session, Bitcoin lead the way is pretty much what it's saying here. So that's Bitcoin, Ethereum for you guys. Let's get into the alt market here with some crypto bubbles. If there's any tickers you want me to check out, just let me know. Drop them in the chat. All right, so let's get to the top 100 here. In the top 100, wow, Trump coin is up 43.1%. You know what? There's a headline about the Trump coin, and we'll get into it a little bit. I think it has a little something to do with this pump on the Trump coin here. So not something I would be chasing at all right now. I have PTSD with the Trump coin, though, because when it launched, it really took the liquidity out of every other token, right? Back in the beginning of 2025. But it's up 43% today, probably based on that news, but also the overall market is thriving right now, as Bitcoin and Ethereum has shown some strength this morning. You got Tau bouncing up 10% as well. It is cruising now. Like a week and a half ago, this was at 175. It's sitting at $234. So Tau could go on a really strong run here. It's up 10% on the day. You got Render up 15%. What else do we got? We got Ondo up 5% here. Willfi up about 5%. Algorand up 10%. I don't really hear that name very often. Tezos up 4.5%. We got Bonk up 6.6%. Midnight up 8.5%. Morpho, one of the anomalies, pulling back down 4.5%. Hyperliquid as well. That's weird. Morpho and Hyperliquid are two of the stronger tokens in the entire space, and they're both down as everything else is enjoying a green day. So Hyperliquid's pulled back 3.1%. Still bullish on both of those, by the way. Picoin is down 4.5%. You got Arbitrum up 6.6%. Sui up 5.1% there. Clonch. Patty Boo says Clonch. I'm going to look that up in a second. But yeah, so that is the top 100. WilFi up about 5% here. XRP enjoying a little bit of a pump, or push up 2.4% there. Let's look at the top 200. What sticks out here? VVV up 25%. You got Hex. Wow, Hex is up 20.2%. You're gonna pair PulseX with that, up almost 11%. And then what else do we have in that family of Richard Hart? I think there's one more. Okay, yeah. Where's Pulse? Oh, I can't find it. Anyways, Melania coin up 17.1. The worst coin of it was voted worst token of 2025, by the way. What else is up? Optimism. Wow. OP is up 7% after really just getting beat up consistently after the whole, and they laid off a lot of people yesterday. Probably because of the Base announcement. They don't have that relationship with Base like they had and stuff like that. But they laid off a lot of people from the Optimism team. So hey, their token is up. Maybe they're buying back the token by saving on salaries or something. You got Syrup up 3.8%. What else here? So Syrup is the Maple token. We'll talk a little bit about them in the RWA token overview type thing we finished the show off with today. XLP up, or XPL, I should say, up 4.2%. Pith is a competitor to Chainlink, right? So it is an Oracle. And, I think that like some of these industries that are big, like Oracle's being able to get price in a fast way over to now that TradFi is over here and all that stuff, the secondary and third options are going to be big, in my opinion, right? Just like how TradFi works in the sectors over in TradFi. So I think Pith has a good future, up 6% there. And then SBTC up 3%. That's part of the Stacks ecosystem. And then Sonic blockchain up 3.7%. Falcon Finance up 1.2% there. All right, let's get back into some of these comments here. Stan says, what are the banking pain points? Oh, we already talked about that. And then he says, how comfortable is the channel in Brian Armstrong spearheading legislation for crypto? So, personally, I'm not super comfortable with it. Do I have do we have another option? Probably not. And I'm not really comfortable with it because I saw a picture with Brian Armstrong and Larry Fink yesterday, right, on X. And I mean, this is just a transition of, the big players, the Ken Griffins from Citadel, those type of people are, that's what Brian Armstrong and CZ and all these people are going to be. They're the next those, but I still think about like how people making huge opportunities in traditional finance, and for us that have been Web3 natives, like we have an advantage because we know the nature of the space. We know how blockchain works, right? And so we're going to be able to use that knowledge and education that we've had to be able to take advantage of these future opportunities that are going to look different. They're not going to be as obvious as how crypto has been in the past couple cycles. But yeah, so I don't feel comfortable. We don't have another choice, right? I mean, unless the Kraken's getting in pretty good with the Fed master account and stuff like that. But I mean, they're in with the Fed now. You know what I mean? So it's like we don't have great options. I mean, that's just kind of how it is, and we got to accept that, honestly. Myself says slippage disaster. Yeah, that was a horrible slippage disaster for sure with that AAVE situation. And then Patabu says Claunch. Let me look up Claunch. I don't think Claunch is in the top 1,000. They're not even in the top 1,000. But I'm going to pull it up for you because I know it's on Deck Screener here. Patapu with the DGen plays. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Launch. So Launch, if I remember correctly, is a launch pad on Base that you can launch AI agents. Is that correct? And so this is Launch. None of this is financial advice to anybody out there, but this is sitting at a $5.5 million market cap. And you can go to the website here. I know they have a launch pad. But it looks like they have 12,189 holders, so not too bad for a new thing. So their website says token infrastructure for agents. Okay, so it's a launch pad for agents. So agents are the only ones that can launch, and it says launcher, agent only token launching, trading, and liquidity management. It's okay. Hey, actually, I'm bullish on that because people are trying to really just have agents be autonomous and do all these things. We'll see, how much it picks up though. That whole X402, if you look at the volume isn't too impressive, but not for Clonch. I'm talking about the X402 volume as of late. It was ramping up towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year, but lately it's been going down. I think it's because it's not easy to get your agent to be autonomous. It's not. Like, they act like you can just, click a button and get it. Like, I've gotten mine to do that, but not in the ways that they're saying. It hasn't used X402 rails, but I've gotten my agent to that's hilarious, Glass Hopper. I've gotten my agent to be able to make swaps with Solana autonomously and do things like that. Once that gets easier though, and there are projects that are coming out with like solutions for that, then that's whenever I think we start to see the tons and tons of agents doing things for their humans. So, but all right. What else was there? I wanted to hit on something really quick. Something. All right, maybe it was a headline here, but goodness, I forgot what it was. I had a good point, and I just forgot it. A good point. All right, well, let's get back into a little bit of news here before we get into those RWA tokens here. So this situation's a little weird for me because it made me kind of concerned about the ecosystem, Bitcoin ecosystem. Also, it doesn't make sense because the Bitcoin maxis are all about like using Bitcoin as money, but the headline is, Bitcoin Policy Institute urges changes to U.S. tax rules that treat all Bitcoin payments as capital gains. And I'm just like, okay, so if I buy a mango in Costa Rica with Bitcoin, then the retail owner of that fruit stand has to treat that as like a capital gains. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would they try to push this? It doesn't make any sense to me. They have a couple documents out here, and it says the Bitcoin deminimizes tax exemption. Every time an American uses Bitcoin to buy a cup of coffee, they owe the IRS a report under current law. Okay, so maybe it's the opposite. It says Bitcoin is classified as property, which means every transaction, no matter how small, triggers a capital gains calculation and a report obligation. I see what they're doing. They're trying to change it. Okay, so that was my bad. I misread it. And so, yeah, that's how it should be, right? If we're gonna be using it like that, because it also made me kind of worried about the Bitcoin ecosystem. Because I mean, imagine how many transactions are happening with like Bitcoin ordinals, or whenever you buy fungible tokens with Bitcoin, all that stuff, right? I mean, it's they need to clarify this. This is a big part that needs to just be really cleared up, and I hope that they do that. All right. If you were headed to token 2049 in Dubai this year, unfortunately, that got postponed to next year. So there was an announcement from the team that runs token 2049, and they said that it's been pushed to this year or next year. And the reason why is because there's certain areas in Dubai that are getting attacked by drones right now. And so I mean, this is like perfect bear market stuff, right? Perfect bear market headlines, perfect bear market material. You know, the ETH Denver conference, half of the side events got canceled. Like this is, I mean, this is different. This is a geopolitical situation, but man, I mean, it's like when you're in the bear market, you're in the bear market for sure. That is faux show. Glasshopper says clonch. That's what I call my ex. That's what we were all laughing about, by the way, guys. That was pretty funny. And then myself says, this is how they fight you. They create bogus rules and regulations. Absolutely. And a lot of times the institutions don't follow them because they make so much money. They don't have to, they just pay the fine. Right. And so if they get caught, they get caught. They just pay the fine. And guess what? Like, yeah, maybe it's a little headline on Bloomberg, but it's not really talked about for very long. And that's just how it goes. This was very interesting here. This is a surpriser, a shocker. Tether aims to complete a full audit by the end of 2026 per Bloomberg, right? So I guess those huge XRP whales and other whales that hate Bitcoin and hate Tether, that always say that Tether has no collateral to be able to mint all these tokens. I guess they're going to be able to, or they won't be able to say that anymore, right? Because Tether's going to have a complete full audit by the end of this year. We'll see if this happens though. So this has been, ongoing situation with Tether. Everybody's just constantly like, hey, why don't they, get audited, all these things, and they feel like they don't have to, that type of situation. But they are saying they're going to do it. So we're going to see. And I'm interested to see if this is going to have all the value, the TVL of everything that they have, because we're going to be able to see the inside of all that craziness, right? I mean, like all the gold they own, all of the treasuries that they own. They're the highest. They own the most treasuries outside of any country in the world right now, U.S. treasuries. Gold, they're like pretty much the largest entity that owns the most gold as well, right? So we're going to see some craziness at the end of this year with that audit probably. All right, let's see what we got next here. Alibaba, which is one of the largest companies in China, joins 35 million fundraise for Singapore-based stablecoin and RWA platform, Metacomp. So, this is another reason that I'm so bullish on RWAs is that these companies in China and Asia are like really getting bullish and getting involved with the RWA sector as well. Alibaba is no different. Alibaba is definitely a world leading company. The U.S. companies are the biggest. That's pretty obvious, right? But then Chinese companies are really big as well. I mean, Alibaba is directly involved with AI. They are the ones that created the Quinn model, the Quinn 3.5, right? Or all the Quinn models. So for them to kind of get into this RWA sector, to me, it's bullish, right? These big companies are just, they know that the TVL is going on chain. So that is very, very bullish in my opinion. All right, this is the last one before we get into some RWA coins that we're going to check out. And it is the Trump coin. The reason why I think it's probably pumping a little bit here, or a lot, because I think it was, I can't remember how much percent it was up, but it was the largest in the top 100. But there was an announcement that says Donald Trump's meme coin to host another dinner gala. The token is down 96% from its January 2025. But that was because it was crazy. And I think it was at like, what is it now? Let's see what the market cap is of it now. I think let's see. Wow, the market cap is only 870 million. I could have sworn it was at least in the low billions now. When it launched, it got to like $40 billion. $40 billion market cap in January 2025. But anyways, so maybe people are anticipating that this is going to be some sort of crazy buyback situation or something, but I don't like it. It stinks to me. you know, that stinks in my opinion. Patty Poo says Circle's USDC overtakes Tether's USDT in trading volume for the first time since 2019. Yeah, that is interesting. That is very, very interesting. All right, let's get into some RWA tokens here and see what's worth taking a look at here. Okay. All right. So I do have the RWA category on CoinMarketCap. Some of these are, related to RWA in terms of, like, for example, Chainlink, they're providing like Oracle services to some of these, I'm sure, stuff like that. But like, I'm not really talking about those. I'm talking about the ones that are like, have a lot of potential maybe, or upside, that not the everyday person knows about too much, right? So Sky is one of them for sure. I'm going to pop that out. Sky is one that I've taken quite a, bit of a look at here. So Sky is, the FTV is 1.92 billion. Let's see what their circulating is though. So I do know that they are a yield provider as well. So we'll keep them here outside here. And then I'm going to continually go down here. Ondo is one for sure. So Ondo's obviously has its connection with BlackRock, right? So a lot of people know Ondo because of that. They're sitting at 2.7 billion, right? And let's go over to their website. I'm going to pop open Sky's website too, because I think one of the biggest things too is like you look at like what the opportunity is in terms of their support. They're getting support from BlackRock, stuff like that. And you see Bank of America down here for Ondo. I don't know why it's freezing up. Oh, my computer froze here. Let me see if, okay, there we go. This is not good. Let me restart my StreamYard here, guys, because it is definitely frozen, that is for sure. All right, guys, I'm back. Sorry. My computer froze up here. But anyways, we're looking at Ondo right now, and the total supply of Ondo is 10 billion tokens. The circulating supply is 4.86. So they're about 50% out. So that's where things can get a little tricky. Now, if it's like a project that's heavily backed by like BlackRock and Bank of America, Wall Street Journal, all of these, Bloomberg, right, all these companies, then I feel like, you still need to look at their schedule release, right, for their early investors, but it's not going to be something that seems, in my personal opinion, as shady as like a project that doesn't have as much backing and, quiet about their releases to their vested schedule stuff, right? Because you can get dumped on pretty hard by early investors, that is for sure. Courtney Johnson says, peace, bro. What is up, Courtney Johnson? Peace to you, sir. Stan says, Plume for RWA. Yes, we're going to hit on Plume here in a second. And then Patty Poo says, BlackRock launches new Ethereum staking ETF. Yep, we went over that yesterday. We hit on that yesterday. It's definitely a big news story for sure. But so Ondo is one I'm looking at. Market cap is, big, though. It's, 2.67 billion. But if you're thinking about all of the RWAs that are coming on chain and being created, TVL, I think there's so much upside for like a company like Ondo still, even if the market cap is that big, right? All right, let's go to Sky real quick. So Sky, this is their website, says get rewarded for saving without giving up control. So they do have a bit more of the staking type of yield availability stuff, but they are involved with RWAs as well. They have a vault and then a lot of stablecoin stuff that they're doing right now. But I found them because I was researching Maple, which is an RWA project as well that I'm bullish on. But Sky, like I said, big market cap as well. So if you're looking for more like upside, then you probably want to look at something like Plume that Stan was talking about here. So Plume has a market cap of 61 million. When I last looked at this last week, it was sitting at 50, so it's starting to pick back up a little bit. Circulating supply is 5.12 billion, so the total supply is 10 billion. So it's kind of in that same ratio as Ondo. So you definitely want to look at the scheduled releases as well. But Plume being a newer project and not as known, it's listed on Binance and Coinbase, right? So the two biggest exchanges in our space has listed them, and they have been getting a lot of attention. They were at the Bitcoin conference in Hong Kong, and I was hearing a lot of good things about them. That's for sure. So if you go to their website, plume.org, you can research them a little bit more and kind of check out their products. Right here, their Nest product is a earn real world yield. And that's where the yield comes in with these real world products. They're based off of that, like actual yield off of real world products in or assets, right? So it has more substance than your typical staking for this type of situation, like this token, just because the token is associated with the project, right? There's actual assets backing this. So that's why I'm more bullish on the yield stuff in the RWA sector, because it makes logical sense, right? I want to share my screen, but I don't want my computer to freeze up again. Let me try. Okay. All right, so here's Plume that I was looking at. They're sitting at like 1 cent, 0.01191. They are down pretty far from their all-time high. I mean, every newer token is, right? They're down 92% from their all-time high. But like I said, almost every token is. Sky's up, though, 21%. But again, this is one that's really established right now, right? I said newer ones are really kind of down. And then Ondo's up 65% from its all-time high. Again, another established one, though. So Plume is definitely more on the risk curve for sure, but they do have a lot of backing as well. I mean, if you go to their website, you can see they have a lot of institutional backing in our space, right? Animoca is here, Portal Ventures. Who else do we have here that's popping out? Galaxy Digital. So they are definitely smaller, though. They are a smaller project, so you got to remember that. But yeah, let's see if we can find one more in here that that will stick out to me, because I've been looking at RWAs for a while. Polymesh is something that people are looking at right now, right? Market cap's at 41 million. And so that's one to kind of dive into, have a little bit more, do some research on it. Circulating supply is a little bit better. I mean, it's better. Circulating supply is 1.03 billion, and then total supply is 1.25 billion. So, about 66% there released. But again, always check the vested schedule release. That is the most important thing, right? For these 7 tokens. All right, let's check Polymesh's website, and then we'll finish it there. And if there's any other ones that you guys know about, you want me to check out. But Polymesh says the future proof RWAs with a purpose built blockchain. So this is a chain itself, that is going to be focused around RWAs. It says Polymesh's purpose built public permissioned infrastructure unlocks financial products and streamlines workflows with regulatory compliant issuance and settlement. And that's another thing too. A lot of these are, not blockchains. They're projects on Ethereum or, these other chains. And a lot of them just end up, servicing like a bunch of different EVM style chains. The ones with blockchains, you got to look for the regulatory compliant part, that they're way ahead of that, right? Way ahead of that stuff. And it looks like Polymesh is. So, they look like they're trying to welcome builders here. There's a builder section here. And, this is kind of like, this is where they want to specialize in on their chain, right? So definitely something I'm going to continually take a look at. Stan says projects like Hedera seem to be a natural fit for RWA because of their partners in tech, but they haven't climbed the ranks. Any opinion on why the masses prefer ETH even though it loses in tech? Tech doesn't always, actually, I feel like most of the time it doesn't win in our space necessarily. What wins is, investment. And if you look at when Ethereum launched in 2017, there was a reason why Ethereum won the kind of sentiment war during that time. And, the SEC chair was more favorable towards Ethereum than XRP, all these things, right? So if you think about like the ICO that happened with Ethereum, there was a lot of people, and it wasn't like, blasted out there public knowledge because institutions at the time didn't want to be really associated with crypto intentionally. I think it's been completely intentional since the beginning. Like this has all been planned in a way. If it wasn't going to be pushed by this current administration, at some point it was going to be pushed through the next one, right? Or eventually. And so I think that there's just a lot of TVL on Ethereum, and there's a lot of invested into Ethereum, and it's bag bias. That's what I think it is, honestly, because if it was tech, then ICP would be leading the way for almost every part of our space, right? And so, but Hedera does have a lot going for it because of, their board. They have probably one of the most TradFi translated, where you can, I guess like transfers over to from TradFi to our space. They're going to have the easiest time naturally with their board and their partners. If you look at Hedera's board, you're talking about huge, like multi-billion-dollar companies in Web2 and TradFi, right? So I think Hedera is going to have a big place in our space, and it might be something that just starts to sneak up on people, because right now there is an RWA arms race to get as much TVL onto chains. And, I think that there's like a lot of rushing happening and stuff like that. With Hedera, they've been around for quite some time. They have a game plan, so I wouldn't worry about Hedera too much. But to answer your question, I think that's why ETH is beating everybody in this. Solana recently has started to onboard more wallets for RWA activity, but Ethereum has had the most TVL, and I think they always will, probably, right? Unless something big happens, right? But yeah, that's kind of just a brief little RWA, segment that I wanted to try out today, and I'm going to try some different things out. It's the best time to do it in the bear market, but definitely love kicking in with you guys on a Friday the 13th. There is a buy one get one Chipotle if you have tattoos between 3 and 4 p.m. today. So I'm gonna go get one for me and my wife. We both have tattoos. So if you're in that range of 3 and 4, it is nationwide too, I believe. So check your area. Go take advantage of the BOGOs for sure. Buy one get ones. But I appreciate all you guys. I'm going to be working a card show today. If you guys are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area at all, head over to the Dallas Card Show in Allen. My brother is a big person in that space. He's I'm so proud of him. He's done amazing things, and he has a big booth on the corner. And I love that hobby. It's just, growing up as kids collecting cards, and it's just what it's become. It's on fire right now, by the way. Like, everybody wants Pokemon, everybody wants One Piece, everybody wants, Luca, Cooper. It doesn't matter. Like, they just want cards right now, and it's a fun time. So head over there. Let me know if you are. I'm going to be helping out at the show this weekend. Would love to run into some of you guys. But let's see, we got one comment here as well. Stan says, "Is it easier to build on ETH than Hedera?" Thanks. Well, Hedera is EVM compatible, so not necessarily. And Emblem Vault is building over there, so it's not really about how easy it is to build. It's more about where the liquidity is. To be honest, that's our space. Like, where's the liquidity? If you have something new, hot and sexy, you better have some liquidity with it, and you better be able to sustain that liquidity. If you can do those two things, then look at Pump Fund. What's so great about Pump Fund? There's not much great about it except for liquidity concentration and sustainability of liquidity. It's the launch pad. There's 1,000 launch pads, right? And Monad is just as fast, right? So anyways, appreciate all the questions and comments, guys. Hope you guys have a blessed weekend, and I will catch you guys on Monday. Peace.